Jake Roberts adjusted his batting gloves, eyes fixed on the pitcher 60 feet away. Bottom of the eighth, 2 outs, down by 1 run. The Portland Pioneers hadn't won a series in 3 weeks, and the pressure surrounding Pioneer Field and the team was high. Jake didn't care. He had his own records to chase. The pitcher wound up and delivered a fastball that caught too much of the plate. Jake's swing was textbook perfect, the crack of the bat sending the ball soaring toward left field. As it cleared the wall, Jake raised his fist, watching his hand to work before beginning his trot around the bases. It was his 20th homer of the season, not bad for a shortstop before the All-Star break. As he rounded third, Jake prepared for the celebration waiting in the dugout. He'd put the team ahead, surely they'd acknowledge that. But as he touched home plate and approached the dugout, he was met with silence. 25 men sat or stood motionless. No one moved, no one spoke, no extended hands for high fives. Coach Miller stared at his clipboard as if Jake didn't exist. "Real mature, guys," Jake muttered, taking his seat at the far end of the bench. 30 excruciating seconds passed before Marcus Washington, the veteran first baseman, started a slow, deliberate clap. Reluctantly, the rest of the team joined in with half-hearted congratulations. "Nice hit," Marcus said, no warmth in his voice. "Glad to see someone still padding their stats." Jake rolled his eyes and turned away, pretending to study the pitcher warming up for the ninth. It didn't matter what they thought. He was playing the best baseball of his career. The team bus pulled up to the Palmer Grand Hotel in Chicago after a grueling, delayed flight. The Pioneers were scheduled for a 4-game series against the White Sox, and the players shuffled into the lobby, exhaustion clear in their slumped shoulders. Jake kept to himself, as had become his habit. Once he'd been at the center of team dinners and card games on the road. Now, he grabbed his room key and headed straight for the elevator without a word to his teammates. "Remember, team breakfast at 8:30, Coach Miller called out." "Mandatory." Jake nodded without turning around. He'd be there, but only because it was required. He had better things to do with his morning than listen to Miller's tired motivational speeches. Room 714 was spacious with a king bed and a view of the Chicago skyline. Jake tossed his bag in the corner, got out of his travel clothes, and collapsed onto the mattress, only to find himself awkwardly wedged into a tightly folded sheet. He struggled, kicked, and finally extracted himself from what he realized was an expertly executed short-sheet job. Pulling the bedding apart, he found a handwritten note. "Since you're carrying the team, thought you'd want to sleep tight." Jake crumpled the note and threw it across the room. Whoever arranged for this to be done, probably Walters or Thompson, would get over it. They were just jealous of his .3 to for batting average. He remade the bed properly and fell into a restless sleep, ignoring his phone buzzing with the team group chat of messages about a late dinner at a nearby pizzeria. After taking 2 of 4 games from the White Sox, the team returned home in better spirits. Jake had gone 7-for-16 in the series with 3 doubles and another home run. The fact that the Pioneers had won seemed secondary to his own performance. He was happy for the team and very pleased with himself. The Friday night game against their division rivals, the Seattle Mariners, drew a sellout crowd. Jake drove in 2 runs with a double in the 3rd inning, but refused to lay down a sacrifice bunt in the 7th that would have advanced the tying run to 3rd. "I'm not giving away at-bats," he told Coach Miller. "You've got 8 other guys who can do that." Miller had given him a long, hard look before calling for a pinch hitter. The Pioneers lost the game by 1 run. After post-game interviews where Jake talked about his own performance rather than the team's loss, he headed to the players' parking lot. His pearl white Maserati was missing from its reserved spot near the stadium exit. Looking for something, the night security guard asked with a poorly concealed smile. "My car. It was right here." "Haven't seen it," the guard said, turning away too quickly. Jake spent 30 minutes searching the sprawling lot, finally spotting his car in the far corner of the employee section, wedged between a rusted pickup and a minivan with a baseball mom sticker. When he returned to the clubhouse to demand an explanation, it was empty except for Tony, the elderly equipment manager, who handed him his keys with a knowing look. "Found these in the return bin," Tony said. "There was a note with them." Jake snatched the piece of paper. "Thought you'd want some extra distance to show off your speed. Real funny," Jake muttered. "Who put you up to this?" Tony shrugged. "I just work here, Mr. Roberts. But if I were you, I'd start wondering why your teammates feel the need to send these messages." With their division rivals, the Los Angeles Angels, in town, Jake arrived at the stadium early for pre-game warm-ups, determined to show everyone he was still professional despite the childish pranks. His locker appeared untouched, but when he reached for his game glove, the perfectly broken-in Wilson A2000 that had been with him since AAA, it wasn't there. "Has anyone seen my glove?" he asked, trying to keep his voice level. No one answered. 25 other players suddenly became intensely focused on their own preparation. "This isn't funny. That glove is part of my routine." Coach Miller approached, frowning. "Problem, Roberts, someone took my game glove. Use your backup. In-field practice in 5. Jake reluctantly pulled out his stiffer backup glove and joined the team on the field. The leather felt wrong in his hand, the pocket too shallow. During the 20-minute practice, he botched 3 routine grounders, each error met with silence from his teammates. When they returned to the clubhouse, Jake's Wilson was sitting in his locker as if it had never been missing. Tucked in the webbing was another note: "Teams back each other up." Jake slammed his locker shut, garnering looks from nearby players who quickly averted their eyes. The next morning, Alicia from PR approached Jake with a printed schedule. "Media's really interested in you today. 5 interviews starting in 15 minutes, Jake nodded, secretly pleased. The local media was finally giving him the attention his performance deserved. "I've set aside the auxiliary media room on the 3rd floor for you," Alicia said. "The Beat Writers Association is first, then KGW-TV, Sports Radio 620, Baseball Monthly, and finally the Pioneers Podcast." "Thanks," Jake said, already mentally preparing his talking points about his approach at the plate and how he'd refined his swing in the off-season. He spent the next 2 hours in the empty media room, checking his watch as no reporters appeared. After waiting 30 minutes past the time for the final interview, he stormed out and headed to the video room, where he found the entire team and coaching staff watching film from yesterday's game. "Where were all my interviews?" he demanded from the doorway. 30 heads turned toward him, and Marcus held up Jake's interview schedule with a small note at the bottom he hadn't noticed before. "Remember, there's no I in team." Something inside Jake snapped. The weeks of isolation, the pranks, the judgment, it all came crashing down. "Is this fun for all of you?" he shouted, voice cracking. "You think you know me? You think this is all about stats and contracts and showing off?" The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut. "You have no idea what I'm dealing with," Jake continued, angry tears threatening to spill. "None of you bothered to ask why I've been so focused. Why I need every hit, every RBI, every edge I can get." Coach Miller stepped forward. "Then tell us, Jake. Because right now, all we see is a player who's looking for the next big thing and abandoning his team." Jake's shoulders slumped, the fight drained out of him as quickly as it had erupted. "My dad has a rare form of leukemia," he said quietly. "The standard treatments aren't working. There's an experimental protocol in Houston he's been recommended for, but insurance won't cover it. $60,000 a month." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I've been trying to put up numbers that would get me a better contract or some endorsement deals. I need the money." The silence that followed was different from the silence of the dugout after his home run. This was the heavy silence of recognition and regret. "Why didn't you say something?" Marcus asked. "I didn't want pity or special treatment. I didn't want to be the guy with the sick father. I just wanted to earn my way to helping him." Jake leaned against the doorframe. "I've been missing team stuff to make video calls to him in the hospital. If he doesn't get this treatment, or if he does and it doesn't work, he doesn't have much time." Marcus exchanged looks with several veteran players, then stood. "We owe you an apology," he said. "We thought you were just being selfish." "I probably was," Jake admitted. "I got so focused on helping my dad that I forgot what it means to be part of this team." "I'm sorry." Coach Miller placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "We're going to help you figure this out, son. That's what teams do." The change was remarkable and immediate. Marcus, the team captain, organized a charity auction with signed memorabilia from players around the league. The front office worked with Jake on restructuring his contract to include a performance bonus. Several players with endorsement deals introduced Jake to their contacts and brought him into their next commercials as a special guest. A few weeks later, Jake's father was admitted to the Houston Medical Center to begin the experimental treatment. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Jake changed too. He started staying late to help younger players with their fielding. He volunteered for community events. Most importantly, he played with a joy that had been missing, focusing on what the team needed in each situation rather than his personal statistics. The Pioneers began winning again, climbing back into playoff contention as the summer progressed. Jake's numbers remained impressive, but now they came in service to the team rather than despite it. In late August, with the team in the thick of a pennant race, Jake's father felt strong enough to attend a home game. Jake had arranged for a luxury suite and wheelchair access, eager to show his dad how the Pioneers had become his extended family. The game was tied in the bottom of the ninth when Jake came to bat with runners on first and second. Instead of swinging for the fences, he poked an outside pitch through the right side, allowing the winning run to score from second. As his teammates rushed the field, Jake looked up at the suite where his father stood applauding, color returning to his once gaunt face. The experimental treatment was working. After Jake touched first base, his teammates surrounded him. Unlike the silent treatment from months before, this celebration was raucous. Marcus and Lyle Walters hoisted Jake onto their shoulders as the crowd roared. "Put me down, you idiots," Jake laughed, but they carried him halfway to the dugout before setting him on his feet. Later, in the clubhouse, Coach Miller handed Jake the game ball. "Your dad would be proud of more than just that hit," Miller said. "He'd be proud of the man you've become these past few months." Jake nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," he finally managed. "Even the pranks," Marcus clapped him on the back. "Especially the pranks. Nothing says we care like short-sheeting a guy's hotel bed." The team laughed, and Jake joined them, grateful for the lesson they'd taught him that sometimes the biggest plays happen off the field, and even the most talented shortstop is just one part of something greater than himself. Jake's father completed the first round of the experimental treatment in September, just as the Pioneers secured a wild card spot in the playoffs. The prognosis was better than anyone had dared hope. After the final regular season game, Jake found a note in his locker. It wasn't hidden in his glove or attached to a prank. It was signed by every member of the team. "Some things are bigger than baseball. We've got your back on and off the field." Jake pinned the note inside his locker where he would see it before every game. A reminder that while baseball was full of individual moments, the pitcher versus the batter, the fielder alone with a fly bullet was still, always, a team sport. And so was life.